Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Kislinsky. I'm the founder of Go Global World, and this is the video podcast we are doing with experts from around the world to help entrepreneurs to achieve their goals and let them move to the next step forward. And today we have the third podcast with Georgi Koreli, the alumni of GSB Stanford School, and he's also a new student at GSB again who has a lot of expertise in business and he's sharing with you. The topic for today is quite important for those who face the wall, face the challenge of moving forward with their company. And we want to discuss pivot. How to pivot, how to find your next step when you don't know what to do next, your business stopped, you're not growing, you're probably having some failures, you're having some issues, your customers don't want to buy more, or something is happening that doesn't allow your business to grow. So how to pivot successfully so you then can scale your business fast. Welcome, Georgi, to our podcast again. Great to have you here. So I'm excited to discuss this topic because myself, I faced lots of challenges and I had to pivot myself a lot of times. And this kind of topic is giving an opportunity for entrepreneurs to think a little bit beyond their box. All right, so the floor is yours, and let's talk about the pivot.
Always pleasure, Daniel. Thank you for having me. And the question we will discuss is, should we pivot or not? And what is pivot? So, and we had a lot of discussions, at Stanford, when I was taking entrepreneurial classes taught by the leaders in product market fit, in lean startup, and in all other startup directions, whether it's backcasting approach, right? Whether you go and ask your customers, it always comes to when you should pivot and what is pivot. And surprisingly, pivot in traditional terms is not changing your idea. Pivot is it's a bit different thing, and there are certain signals that you should follow to understand what's the right time to pivot. Based on conversations with founders of the biggest companies that I have been having during my Stanford time, and now when I'm organizing these dinners with Silicon Valley icons, most of these people pivot. And they share their stories, and like all the stories are super interesting. How they realize that they should change something, or when something didn't work well. Pivoting is iterating on how and who, but not what. It means that you have now who is your audience, how is your way you deliver the product, whether it's a website, it's a service, it's the tool, but what is your core insight and core hypothesis that drives you to solve certain problem. Therefore, when you change your idea, when you change what, it's no longer pivot, it's a restart. And restarts rarely solve the problem and rarely work. And the major takeaway about pivoting is that you should pivot immediately if the original idea doesn't work. So basically, it means that you have certain time. Usually it's like up to a month that you build some very dirty MVP. After you build this MVP, you show the audience that you thought has this biggest problem that you're solving. And if this doesn't resonate with the audience, it doesn't make sense to build features or to make it more clean or add some things that you thought might be super relevant, because there is no need, right? There is no if your customers doesn't want to eat this food that you give them, they just don't they won't use it this, and then you will be very heavy into selling. You might sell a couple times to your customers, but you will never be able to find product market fit. And if you are targeting venture backed business, it means hyper growth. How can you hyper grow if your sales cycle is long, if your checks are low because there is no need, and if there is no product market fit in the cycle? That's the main disadvantage of YC, not even disadvantage, but why, for example, some critics at Stanford don't like YC as much, because when you go to YC, you usually focus on hyper growth. So you immediately sell and try to persuade the customers. And in many times, and as we know, in 95% of YC companies fail too. These companies don't work, and you just don't have product market fit because you didn't prove that there is a core need. Two good examples that I had during my dinners is one is Lattice. It's a software, HR software company that they're providing performance software, evaluations, and so on and so forth. It's $2 billion company. So when Lattice first started doing something in this space, they just started selling to enterprises. And one of the founders was very well connected in Silicon Valley. So he was just going to different enterprises and asking, hey, do you need this product? And for sure, because he was super well connected, and it was some of kind of minor problem of the enterprises, he heard a lot of yeses. Yeah, sure, why not? And then in a year, so they got to YC, they had several customers, which is like pretty small checks of 20, 30K. And then after a year, they realized that it's so hard to sell their product that no one was buying. But then they listened to their customers, and customers said, hey, it would be great to have like a performance evaluation because we are kind of struggling in this. And then they realized, like, wow, this is a market that they didn't expect. So they completely shifted their focus on different products, killed previous idea, and then actually in 3 years they returned it, but in a like very different segment. And then they were super, like, finally what we have here, they were super early in starting these directions in HR segment, right? When actually the whole world started caring about hours of work, about how happy are the employees, about how much they appreciate feedback and performance, and then it should be delivered in a very nice and smooth, proper way. So, and then suddenly there was super early in the market that needed this product because of burnout of employees and other problems that the world was facing, and then they started selling like crazy. So, and this is a good example of pivot that helped completely change the growth trajectory. But then, it savored the surprise because, uh, the intention that they had initially is, to build the product, ask the customers, have feedback, and then it helps them to actually figure out what is the right direction and jump there. Another good example is Alchemy. So Alchemy is the hyper-growth Web3 AWS for blockchain in Silicon Valley. I would say maybe it's like the fastest growing company because it got 10 billion valuation in less than 2 years. So it's something fascinating. I was organizing dinner with the founder recently, and he had this rule when he was starting, his rule of 5 days. And this is super interesting thing because he was, he hired several people, and in order to understand the core problems of their users and customers, they were asking them, feedback for sure. But then they had several big tech guys in the company, and big tech guys used to work in a very, sophisticated environment when they build something beautiful, and they should ship it. It takes time. It needs different features. But then Nikhil, the founder, brought it down to the core. When he needed to ship something, he was asking to do something in 5 days, and he didn't accept any shifts from it. His developers were saying, "Hey, how about logging? How about like UI, or how about this like certain feature that was not core?" And then he was rejecting all these asks and going down to the core. Hey, like this is it. Like we just need one core functionalities that we have assumption about. If this doesn't work, we are killing it. And then he developed this space of 5 days for each product. And finally, it's a $10 billion company. So this is a fascinating story because also Nikhil tried 12 different products before, and none of them worked. 10 years after graduation from computer science department at Stanford. And then he didn't lose conviction, lived still in a kind of tiny room with his co-founder and finally got the idea right. So this is an amazing story to my mind. It rarely happens because people usually, after several years, they either run out of money and give up or just lose conviction. But here we see how rewarding is the path for people who didn't give up. So yeah, pivot immediately if the original idea doesn't work. Uh, Build something super easy, which what shows your core. If it doesn't work, if the customer doesn't want to buy because of this core, there's no desperation, just kill it. And changing of what means restart, changing the original idea. I would say that in case of nickel and alchemy, their focus was on, they were optimizing on the industry blockchain. They already had before the experience with blockchain, so they were building the products for hedge funds. And then they they had domain expertise in a relatively new industry, super smart. And then they were, like, what we want to do, so we want the biggest companies in the world are the platforms, right? So we should understand the problems of developers to build something great. And that's how they were able to iterate on the ideas around the platforms for developers. Because this is kind of two-sided business and in a very new direction that is growing like crazy. So they gave it some time, to develop real theories, but they were building around the same core and the futures they were seeing in the blockchain. With the lattice, they were listening to the customers, but they were in a similar industry. So they were in HR. So this is, and then there were sub-segments, performance reviews, background like feedbacks, and it was, and then they were just listening customers. So this is also very interesting way, right, to understand how to pivot and what creates good pivot for the company. I remember we had also one of the dinners with founders, and what they did, it was with Mitchell Hashimoto from HashiCorp. And what he said that they actually, they built a product, they spent around 2 years on the product. And then they realized that there is no product market fit. So even though it was like core infrastructure product, companies were not buying it. And then what they did is just took all the notes from the customers and started listening and reading what was the feedback. And then after listening and just analyzing all this feedback, they realized that they were pushing their product too much instead of just listening customers. So they made several major takeaways and just built something that overlapped with customer needs. And now it's a $5 billion core infrastructure tools for DevOps. So the changing the core idea, so changing what means you don't have the insight and rarely leads to positive results. And a good example for it is, and this is a bit a tricky part, because you build your idea, it doesn't work, you still want to be entrepreneur, right? And then you have this issue is, what should I do now? So again, I had kind of insight, it didn't work. I changed the markets, so I iterated on who. So you tried college students, you tried um, who else? Like you tried seniors, you tried employees, didn't work. So changing markets didn't work, and you showed in a different ways, right? You showed the app, you showed the core functionality, like I said, to companies. It still didn't work, and now you're in a very hard position. By hey, like I have the product. I had the insight, it didn't work. What can I do? And the problem here is like you have no longer insight, right? The only way you can build something now out of this is to have another insight from your customers, right? And it's a very tricky and risky path, right? Because you are building something, even if it doesn't work, you want to build something, but you don't know what. So then you are building something else, and then the likelihood that it will work is super low. The only possibility is that you got some insight from your customers about different thing, and then you listen to them and think, oh, okay, so I can shift my attention to a bit different way, and then it might work. But odds are super low, so you would rather find a job and develop your insight in a better way instead of just trying spray and pray approach, where you just building something that no one wants without building your domain expertise in certain subsegment. And this is a bit tricky and maybe counterintuitive, because usually what you hear is, you should have perseverance. You should not give up. But imagine that you can spend, 10, 12 years just like based on your perseverance, and it doesn't work. I had one example of this kind of case. A year ago, the guy from LinkedIn reached out to me and said, "Hey, Georgie, I live in Madrid, and I would love to meet you one time in the Bay Area." So I met the guy, and he was around like 50 years old, 45, 50 years old, and he showed me like his 12 ideas, and he was just writing them in the notebook and saying, "Hey, Georgie, imagine we have this flying car, or these cabins in the cars, and they can charge each other, something else, like total 12 ideas." And I was looking at these ideas and saying, okay, tell me, what are you doing for these ideas, and how much time you spend? And he was, hey, I live in Spain, and the only thing I'm doing, I'm just thinking about ideas, trying to do them. So I didn't actually see like very big bias to action, but the fact that he flew to the US to show these ideas and to find someone was super interesting. But obviously, like, he was doing this for 15 years or so, just thinking about these ideas and trying to develop thesis, find someone who will invest and trying to build. And obviously, it didn't work, right? That's why we don't want to waste our time, and we want to be efficient. That's why, having something on the side that helps you become efficient and develop your core domain is super important. And as I mentioned, watching for desperate users looking for core functionality is the most important thing. Adding features usually don't help. And when in the same case of Alchemy, when they were interviewing people, the core problem was nodes for blockchain. So it's extremely hard to build on blockchain. And they started helping them, and for sure it was a problem for everyone. That's how it took off, with just like basic core functionality. Lat is the same, HashiCorp, same direction. Now, all big companies, took off by solving very core need for desperate users, even with a shitty product initially. Therefore, don't add features because it doesn't help. Try to understand the core and build for this direction.
Yeah, that's quite awesome. I have actually my own example. I'm teaching at a few business schools at one of the entrepreneurship course. One of the team of the students, they were doing some market research, and they were testing out their hypothesis and initial pre-MVP. And so they were working on something like building an app to do some market sentiment analysis and share this information with people who don't have any skills of trading. And the idea was like, okay, so we have the technology to actually analyze all the communication channels about the stock market and something like that. And now we know how to predict a little bit the trends, and we can share it with the public who have no clue how to properly invest, and maybe increase their chances to invest in the right stocks on the right time. Well, now they started testing out at this, and they realized that regular people don't want it. They don't understand it. And instead, they just realized that brokers, who actually was not their target audience at all, they were super interested in that. And they realized that, oh, okay, we got to change our target audience. And that was an inspiring learning. They had to completely shift their solution and the target audience, and redo everything from scratch, just because they found this insight and it was so powerful.
Yeah, Daniel, that's a great story. And I have actually one more story. That's how we learned this savor of the surprise term in one of our classes. product market fit class actually. And the original story goes to Intuit founder Scott Cook. And when he first launched his QuickBooks, I think it was QuickBooks, that was calculating taxes for individuals first. And then in a year after launch, they actually just looked at the data and users, and most of these users were companies, not individuals. And then they realized, wow, we are probably thinking about different direction. We should like sell to enterprises. And that's how the whole, QuickBooks, the biggest product for Intuit evolved. And, they became the massive company out of the surprise that they learned.
Well, the other story, since you mentioned that one, I have from Y Combinator. I really loved it. There was a smart team. They already became super successful after YC, and they were selling their product for like a couple $100. It was a B2B SaaS tech, and so they hired an advisor who helped them to improve and maybe learn how to sell. And the advisor said, like, if you don't price this product at 100K at least or more, I will not work with you. And so then they had a meeting with one of the enterprises in the Bay Area. And this founder was super afraid of mentioning this to the customer because he was afraid of losing a customer. It's an opportunity. And so the customer is asking me, how much are you pricing this? And he said, like very, with a feared voice, like 100K. No, actually, I'm going to give you like 12K. So he's already like 10 times up above the price he was expecting. He said, okay, that's fine. Let's work. And this is how they started pursuing the complex B2B enterprise sales instead of going with SMBs with their technology. And so they realized that their target audience is actually high-end enterprise rather than SMBs. And that was a pivot they managed to do, educating themselves as well during the real negotiation with their customers. I think this is a great example of pivot as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, Daniel. I agree with it. And I would say, it's very counterintuitive also, like which customer you should choose immediately after the launch, right? Because many founders would suggest you to go after big enterprises because checks are high. But then the problem is that you need very big customization for these customers. So you need to completely change your product and spend a lot of time to customize this product for big customers. And for smaller SMBs, checks are low, right? You don't have big checks, but you don't need to customize. And yesterday we met founder of BitGo. It's one of the biggest crypto companies, and he was suggesting to go after big customers. But surprisingly, a month ago we met the founder of Databricks, and Databricks were saying that you shouldn't go after big customers because you will waste all your time just selling them and customizing your product. You should go after medium and small size businesses because you don't need to change anything. That's how you will be able to achieve the scale. So I think you should always take different advices with a grain of salt because otherwise you'll just get lost at some point.
Yeah, that's right. So my question to you regarding the pivot. When do you need to do pivots? There are several scenarios I'll mention. I have an idea, and I'm going to test my idea. I didn't even create an MVP, and I faced the wall, like probably some rejections. Do I need to pivot? Second scenario, I built an MVP and went to the market to validate it. I realized that it doesn't work. I need to pivot, probably. And third scenario, my business was running well, and all of a sudden something like happened. I don't know, black swan appeared, and do I need to pivot? Like, when do I? Does it apply to pivot? What's the difference? And can I call it a pivot in all those scenarios?
So first scenario is not a pivot, right? Because you just have an idea. So you're just showing the idea, so you don't have anything to pivot yet, because it's too early. For second and third scenarios, it's definitely pivoting, right? So especially third scenario. Third scenario means that you already have a product, it works, you have core customers, and now suddenly they stopped buying or they stopped using. So probably there's competition, right, comes to place, and you should just watch out what's happening there. Then you should understand, okay, what is the dynamics, who are your customers? But then it's super hard because if it is already established business and you had the core number of users, they were using your product for certain goals, and now you're thinking, okay, better product came to the market, right? And now you probably think about, okay, what are the other customers that you can serve that this product didn't capture? And then you go to low-end customers or high-end customers. But there is always, some space to go for the pivot and iterating on who.
Right.
Mhm. And on the second direction, when you have an MVP, this is a core for either killing your idea and restarting, or just properly choosing your new market or the way you deliver the product. So what is the product, but not on the inside, right? Because inside is like restart, changing on what, but it's changing on iteration on or audience is a pivot, obviously. So second and third are the right answers.
All right. And the final question is, can you recommend probably the tools to pivot, maybe some businesses that can help you with, maybe some books, or maybe some people that inspired you to think of pivoting as the important process? So anything that could help founders to go to and change.
Yeah, I would go to Medium and read the articles by Andy Radcliffe. And he has several articles, such as Everyone Pivots. He has also like a lot of Medium, just like regular articles, where there are main takeaways, also written by other people about his pivot structure. I would read Savors the Surprise by Scott Cook. And I would also just read Eric Rice, Lean Startup, because I mean, this is the core of entrepreneurs, but they also have a chapter about pivoting.
Yeah.
So I would just read them, or Four Steps to Epiphany by Steve Blunt.
Yeah, agree. And the book of my professor from Stanford, Tom Kosnik, he wrote the book Gear Up, and one of the chapters there, how to pivot, and it's a really awesome one. Actually, this is where I learned about pivoting really well. So thanks a lot. I really appreciate that. And everyone who watched our stream, please like, subscribe, and share this video. It will help a lot of other entrepreneurs who are now facing the challenges and they probably need to pivot. At the same time, all the names we mentioned here and the articles we will put in the description and add the links so you can also explore and learn more. But more importantly, let's talk about that. Like, ask questions in the comments. If you want us to give you the answers, feel free to ask. We'll try to help you because probably there is some situation you're going through and we might help, and we are happy to do so. If you're not a member of Go Global World, go on our website, www.goglobal.world, become a member and join our global chats, join our mailing list, and be an active member. Build your network, build your reputation, and go global with your company. Georgi, that was the third podcast. I let you wrap it up out of all the three you've done. So give you some final words of wisdom to the founders, and we're ready to close.
Yeah, so the major takeaway is first is don't just run for the startup and just don't be obsessed with building something without understanding what's your passion, and where's your domain expertise. You would rather find a job, develop this expertise, and then on the side, build something, as a hobby, or hire a team and build something, and that's how eBay started. That's how actually most of the marketplaces started, because marketplace is extremely hard business because you should hug the both sides of the market, and just starting it as a professional direction, like entrepreneurial direction, super hard. Second is, don't waste too much time. If something doesn't work, immediately kill it or immediately shift your audience. Many times, you should just change the audience. I shared a great example of Notion. When Notion didn't work for 2 years after the launch, they didn't work anywhere, and then they started receiving signals from Asia, and that's how they took off. After they received signals from Asia, they listened to customers, changed, kind of shifted the focus, built sophisticated product, and then they were able to become more than $10 billion company, as I know. Then listen customers, right? When you have your product, you start selling them. The most important thing is actually not whether you sold it or not, but what your customers said. And then talk to as many customers as possible. If you talk to, in the case of Alchemy, it was like 50 customers. They talked to 50 companies building on blockchain. And then obviously they had a lot of clues, right? And a lot of commonalities between them in terms of problems. So they were able to then jump to these problems and solve them, and then become a huge company. The last point that I would love to share is it's not a rule. So what I'm sharing and what I have done so far, in a lot of the cases, entrepreneurship is exception, because only like less than 3% of companies succeed totally, right? And just it's exception because you have big companies, incumbents of this world, Googles and Facebooks, right? And then you're building the startup that is venture backed, and hyper growth in a kind of an overseen industry, or in subsequent direction that is not economically viable. But then if it is a good business, imagine why wouldn't Google build it? Right? There are obvious reasons for it why startup is exception. So, and many cases are also exceptions. When I'm saying that build like the dirtiest MVP, I'm optimizing on your time, on your effort. But some companies, such as even Zoom, they were built with a very sophisticated idea, and he obviously had an insight, right? Because he was in a WebEx before. But he built sophisticated product in the beginning, and I'm not sure that he would be same successful if he built shitty product in the beginning and spent 5 days. So there are always exception, and everything is super situational. But try to understand what applies mostly to your case, and then try to understand who is the best advisor in this case, right? Because you can listen to thousands of thought leaders and always take their advice, but most of advices might be super irrelevant to you. So understanding specific of your business, whether it's consumer business or is B2B SaaS with a core hypothesis, around the problem. Because in consumer, you need to pay attention to UI, because imagine some people have thousands of apps now, and in order to hug this user, you should show just like beautiful picture. In a Web3 now, you design is a core, because NFTs and all art related things, cannot hug the users without just having beautiful UI. Therefore, you should spend a lot of time, and that's why also consumer is extremely hard business, right, in comparison with B2B. So yeah, this is my last takeaway, that everything is super situational. Startup is exceptions. So try to listen all your suggestions, but take only those that resonate the most with your specific situation.
Awesome. That was Georgi Koreli. And what I love about our talks is that there are plenty of real life examples with leading companies that Georgi met with the CEO of those companies. And this is awesome to have it firsthand. Thank you so much. I look forward to do more podcasts with you. And everyone who was watching us, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a comments. And we'll see you soon. All right, guys, everyone, goodbye.
Thank you so much, Daniel.